Here we go, fire in the hole. Let me know if it comes off. Oh yeah. What's up guys, I'm Jeremy, welcome back to Cavish Motorsports. I have been looking for a vintage looking tachometer for my 1966 Gasser Fairlane project here. Now I was talking to my buddy Steve at work, who is also a hot rod guy, and he said, you know what, I actually have a bunch of them. I don't know if any of them work, but I'll bring some of them to work for you. If you can test them and make them work, we'll make a deal. And he gave me a nice little sampling of tachometers. They kind of run the gamut. One is certainly from the 60s, one is probably 70s, maybe 80s, and the other one is 80s, maybe 90s. And I thought it'd make a fun little video because they're all wired a little bit differently. So we're gonna test at least two of them, and then we'll talk about that third oldest one, and I'll tell you why I can't test it. I spent some time over the last few days and built myself out a little panel cluster here. It's got two 3 3/8 gauge setups and a bunch of other 52 millimeter 2 1/16 setups for, you know, oil pressure and volts and stuff like that. So we'll go speedometer, tachometer on the big gauges, and then everything else will be small. But with gassers, you kind of need things to look right. I've definitely seen gassers out there with like Terminator setups. I don't want to do that. I don't care if it's a 60s gauge. I could live with like an 80s gauge, because remember, these things ran for a long time. But I still want the gauge to be at least older than your average college student. So we're going to test these bad boys with my 62 Catalina here. This is an old 455. The motor's kind of a turd, but it's got an HEI in it. It'll be just really easy to do what we need to do here. I've sort of pre-wired these things up with spade terminals, make it easy on us, so we can just kind of quick swap them in and out. Similarly, I've got power and ground on alligator clamps that we can hook up right to the battery. Again, just make it real easy. First contestant. This is an Autometer 288. This one is probably from the 70s, maybe the 80s, and this is the one that is most likely going to work. It's already the right size for my dash panel here. Now, this is not particularly a dash-friendly unit. This is mostly made to, like, you know, hook up to your steering column, but we can make it work. It's got this slide-out cup here. I can just sandwich the two between, put a hose clamp on it, and we'll make it work. Now, this one, my buddy told me he actually had this one running in his car, but then it started acting funny. And after looking at it, I think I have an inkling of why that might have been. We'll talk about that in a second. Now, if you look closely here, you'll see two small wires that are stuck out of the back of this, and they're clipped. Now, I have put heat shrink on them to close them off, but when I got this tack, they were both kind of free-floating open, and while there wasn't a bunch of wire sticking out, the ends were exposed. That's one of the most important differences I want to talk about between the wiring of the two tacks we're going to test here, because the Moroso unit that we're going to look at also has two smaller wires. They're different colored, but its loops are together. Now, when I got this, I asked Steve, because I was familiar with this. Now, what these are is for if you have a V8, a V6, or a 4-cylinder engine. Normally, if you go buy a tack off the shelf right now, it's going to come with all of them together, and it's in a V8 setting. If you have a 6-cylinder, you clip one wire. If you have a 4-cylinder, you clip both wires. These were both clipped, and I said, Steve, because I know he had a Mopar. He's a Mopar guy. I knew he had a 440 in his car. I said, you know, Steve, are you sure you had this hooked up right? And he goes, yeah, it ran fine for quite a while. I dug around and looked up Autometer 288 directions. Took a while, but I did finally find on an old message board a snapshot of vintage directions for them. And it turns out that these older tacks from the 70s are backwards of how the ones you get today are. They actually came with the wires all put together, but that was for a 4-cylinder. You'd clip one wire for a 6 and clip both for a V8, so it's completely backwards of what a more modern tachometer is. Now, because they were open and this metal cup was on, I kind of wonder, in my buddy's case, if the reason it started acting funny is if one of those wires started grounding out against the cup because they weren't protected. So we're going to see. We're going to hook it up to the car real quick and see if we can make it work. So I've got a wire directly from my tack signal wire on the distributor. Got power, and I've got ground. So we only have 3 things coming from the car. Now, I said these tacks hooked up differently depending on which one we're testing. The older one, the Autometer 288, is 3 wires. This is pretty common for the era. The newer ones are 4. The 3, your power wire is only for the light. You do not need power to power the tack. Green is fairly universal as far as I've seen, being the signal wire. So here's from our tack signal. I've got a green wire coming out of the distributor. We're going to hook that up. And then our ground is going to go to the black wire. And for now, we're not going to hook up the light wire. We'll test the light in a second, see if that works. I'm going to zoom you guys in on the Tach here, and then I'm going to turn the car on, and you guys can let me know if she worked or not. Now, I've just got the door cracked behind me. It's quite cold outside, so I don't want the whole garage door open. And there's a good chance my dog starts barking, because he's used this as his car. So here we go, fire in the hole. Let me know if it comes on. That does look like we have Tach. Rev it up a little bit, see if it moves. Oh yeah. Heck yeah. So we know the Tach works. Let's hook up power and see if the light works. Yeah, it does. Look at that. Fully functional. So we know we have at least one that works. And this is the one that we knew was most likely. And it doesn't seem to be jumping around at all like Steve said. So I kind of think that I might be onto something with it had been grounding out with those two little wires. All right, on to the next. So splash one, we got the Autometer. We know we have an option now. Let's move on to the next. Next is this Moroso unit, and it has 6 wires. We only really need 4. This guy here, the black wires, looks kind of like a lamp cord. This is for an inductive setup. Basically, it's for a magneto. Chances are you guys aren't going to use it. I'm not going to need it. But that's what this like lamp cord looking setup's for, is if you're running a magneto. So we are going to focus on these 4. Now, unlike the 3-wire Autometer Tach, this Moroso has a red wire that you will need to hook up. That's your 12-volt power. You have to hook that up. Green wire for signal, black wire for ground like normal, and then the white wire is just for the light. So we can hook it up and make it run with 3, but to make it light up, you need the 4th. Now, this thing is probably a little out of era. I would guess this is from the 80s, maybe the 90s, but it just kind of speaks to me. I'm not going to lie, I really like this. I want this one to work. I don't know what it is about it. It looks like it should be in like a Bill Elliott Nascar in like 1984, and I just really like it. So if this works, I'm going to try to talk Steve out of this one because I really like this one. So again, I only have 3 wires coming off of the car, so we're not going to hook up the light immediately. So we're going to go my signal to my green wire, and then power to my red wire, and ground to the black wire. And we'll test the light separately here in a little bit, if the thing works to start with. It's the same story as before. This is not going to want to sit straight up pretty with the Moroso aligned, but you can still see what it looks like. We'll zoom you in on that. I'm going to crank the car. Let me know if it works. Please work. You're so cool. Just work. Do the thing. How'd we do? Oh, that looks like it worked. Are we 2 for 2? Yeah, we are. Well, we're 2 for 2, and that really excites me. I really want to use this one. Let's see if that light works. So, I'm going to unplug the 12-volt wire, or I'm just going to touch it to it. Alright, so the light does not appear to work. I have an idea though. So from the parts vault, I'm actually kind of shocked I was able to find this. I have an Autometer light bulb. Now, I don't know this to be a fact, but if I had to guess, I think that this Moroso unit is a rebranded Autometer. I don't think Moroso is making its own Tach. I could be wrong, but the directions are extraordinarily similar. It looks just like an Autometer 5-inch monster Tach, and the bulb looks the same. So I think these are rebranded Autometers. I'm going to throw this bulb in, see if we can make that light work. All right, so we've got our new bulb in. Honestly, it was kind of fiddly to get in there. I had to sit there for a few minutes trying to figure out how to get the right angle on the dangle. Here's our power wire. Car's not on. I don't think you should need 12 volts to this to make the light work. Let's see if the light comes on. There it is. How about that? I don't know how well that's showing up on camera, but the light is on. Off. Sweet. Both of these work. The other one probably looks closer to right in this car, but I really like this one. I might try to talk old Steve out of both of those. See what kind of deal we can strike. Now our last unit here is this really, really cool Stewart Warner unit. It's part number 429371, and it actually has a stamp on the back that says 563. I don't know this to be a fact, but I would bet that means this was manufactured in May of 1963, which is really cool. Unfortunately, 60s tachs like this are what's known as a two-part tach. You need a signal transmitter to make them work. And not just that, you need a specific one depending on if you have a 6-cylinder, a 4-cylinder, or an 8-cylinder. Each one's going to be different. There are modern solutions for this. There's companies that make much more modern transmitters that you can make work. They're not crazy expensive, so if you have a really cool tach that you bought at a swap meet and want to use one, you can get around for about $100 instead of trying to find a working original Stewart Warner or Sun tach transmitting unit. And if I thought this was going to work, I might have spent the money to test it because I think it'd be really cool just to prove this thing works. Unfortunately, see if you can hear this, there's clearly parts rolling around inside of this, and I just don't think it's going to work. On top of that, this unit only goes to 6,000 RPM. The 429 in this, I'm probably going to shift it more like 6,800. It just really wouldn't work for me no matter what, so it was really hard to justify spending the money. But I wanted to talk about it anyway. A little bit of a history lesson. As I understand it, obviously these were standard, and then Sun tach, sometime in the late 60s, early 70s, came out with the Super tach, and that is the self-contained, you only need the tachometer unit that we see today, and kind of the world never went back to these. There are also gear-driven tachs. These are common in Corvettes up through C3s, where you actually have like almost like a speedometer cable that comes off of the distributor and plugs into your tachometer and runs it like that. So those were common as well, but most of the time in the 60s, if you had a tachometer, it was a two-parter like this, and that's probably a big reason that tachs were not standard issue equipment all the way up. Even like my Firebird over here, a tach would have been an option on that. Like, it doesn't just come with it like a lot of cars today would. That's gonna do it. Hopefully you learned something. If you find a really cool looking old vintage tach for not a lot of money at a swap meet, this will show you how to test it really easily. And if it's one of these old guys, just know if it doesn't come with the transmitter, you're probably going to need to find one. You're going to have to do some work to get it to work, no matter how cool it looks. I am going to go to work negotiating with my buddy and see how much I have to pay for these. Please like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.